All right, welcome back. Weekly stock market update. We're going to start off by looking at some of the economic data that we had this week because it'll explain some of the moves that we have in the market. So we started off the week with the jobs revisions, the total jobs revisions from last year, and they revised the jobs down by 800,000 jobs. So they over reported 800,000 jobs for last year. So that is a big revision that they made for the total year last year. So that shows that the labor market has been weaker than what we were told originally. And if you add that with the recent jobs numbers that we've been getting that have been coming in way lower than expected, the jobs market is pretty soft. It's pretty weak. And then we also got inflation numbers this week. So the producer price index came in at minus zero point 0.1. The estimate was up 0.3, so we have negative PPI, which is great to see for inflation. And then CPI came in as expected at 0.3% for core CPI. So good numbers for inflation, bad jobs numbers. That is a perfect recipe for the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates. And they have a meeting next week on Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. So Jerome Powell will give his statement and press conference next week. The market is pricing in a 25 basis point cut. I hear a lot of people calling for a 50 basis point cut, which you could probably make the case for based on the data that we've got the last handful of months here. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these charts here. Before we do that, let's take a look at this heat map. So this week we had Nvidia bounce back up 6%, Apple down 2.5%, Google up 3.5%, Amazon down 3%. The big winner this week was Oracle. They were up 40% after their earnings. They crushed it. Their earnings forecast was really good. They also announced a $300 billion deal with OpenAI to build out a ton of data centers. So $300 billion of data center build makes sense why Nvidia is up. I do need to look into, I heard some rumors that Nvidia did obtain a license to sell some of the H20 chips in China. I'd still need to double check all of that news. But some good news for the AI data center build out this week as well. Some other winners, you had Tesla up 14% and United Healthcare up 14% as well. ETF world, NASDAQ and S&P were both up about 1% and are at all-time highs. So we won't look at those charts because they are just at the top. Not a whole lot to talk about there. Gold market was up almost 2% again this week, so gold staying very strong. The bond market had a good week. We'll take a look at interest rates in a second. And the crypto market had a bounce back this week. Bitcoin up almost 5%, Ethereum up 8%, and green across the board here on a lot of these altcoins here. So let's go ahead and take a look at the 10-year yield since we've got the Federal Reserve next week. We are having another nice week here for lower interest rates. So we are staying below this trend line that we've had here for such a long time. And to me, really does look like interest rates are starting to top out here on the 10-year yield. Again, when we zoom out, interest rates have only gone in one direction for such a very long time until we had the pandemic, basically until we hit zero, and there's nowhere to go from zero besides going back up. So we'll see how close we get back down. But to me, it would make sense for the 10-year yield to be 3.5% and hang out there for a while. We don't want to see, in my opinion, we don't want to see much lower than that, because then just money's too cheap and things get too crazy. And then when you need to raise rates because you have inflation, or you need to cut rates, when you need to cut rates to stimulate the economy, if you're at zero, there's nowhere to cut, that's not going to be effective. So to me, around that 3.5 is a good spot for us to be hanging out at. All right, let's take a look at volatility. Not a whole lot to look at here, except for just we're still here at very low levels of volatility and markets at all-time high. So where's the volatility? We're at all-time highs. Not a lot of fear in this market. Things are moving pretty strong. And again, we keep getting great earnings from a lot of these hyperscaler companies, data center companies, AI companies. They're doing great, but there is other segments of the economy that aren't doing so hot. The other thing I want to talk about tied to interest rates is going to be the Russell 2000. These are the small cap stocks. They tend to rely heavily on borrowing. They have much higher borrowing costs to fund their businesses. So it is approaching an all-time high here. They did get rejected here on the Russell twice at this $2,500 level. So we'll see if it has enough strength to push through here if we do get a nice interest rate cut. And let's go ahead and take a look at some individual names. So Amazon, struggling here, just really chopping along here after their earnings. They had the big drop, recovered, and just not a lot of buzz around Amazon, but still phenomenal business. I will probably be picking up some Amazon next week. We're still in this nice uptrend here since the tariff low. Nothing's really changed for the business. I believe it was a DOJ probe in advertising that hit Amazon and Google. But as we've seen in the past, anytime you get a DOJ fear sell-off on some of these great companies like Google and Amazon, to me that's a buying opportunity because these companies are just phenomenal businesses. Real quick, let's take a look at Bitcoin because it did have a nice week this week. We did have a pretty long bleed, slow sell-off here for these last few weeks, but having a nice bounce back here. Still long-term, very constructive looking chart here. So nothing's changed on my thesis for Bitcoin, and we are just making a nice move back up higher. Ethereum had another nice week this week. Great bounce back. Again, another sell-off. After a huge move upwards, it makes sense to have these sell-offs, pop, sell-off, consolidate, pop, pull back, and then keep moving higher. But Ethereum looks good here. Bitcoin looks good. As far as everything else, TBD. All right, we talked about Amazon, Google, crushing it, all-time high, not giving back any of these gains after this monster move for Google. Nvidia, like I said, sell off at the beginning of the week. Great earnings come out from their customers. China sale or China deals. Good stuff here for Nvidia. To me, this looks like it wants to hit that $5 trillion market cap. Maybe by the end of the year. We'll see. Tesla, nice week this week. Tesla up 15% on the week. Big breakout here. We've just been consolidating sideways here for the last few months, and we resolved this consolidation and we resolved it to the upside. So we'll see where we move from here. I'm very interested to see their monthly deliveries, their quarterly deliveries, how much pull forward, how much demand is going to be spurred with the end of the tax credit. But I do see some increased optimism on the other pieces of their business. The RoboTaxi app is available for everybody to download. You may not be able to get a ride on the RoboTaxi, but it is available for people to look at and play with. And then just the other pieces of their business besides the car business, I see a lot of excitement around that. So they're doing a good job there, and there's a lot less politics going on for this company here. Apple had their iPhone announcement. It dropped after the iPhone announcement and has been recovering since. Not a whole lot to talk about. New iPhones, cool. New AirPods, cool. Just great business here. It's cash cow. Not a whole lot to go over there. All right, who else? Netflix has been a little weak here over the last handful of weeks. Huge run up, pullback, consolidating. Great company here, great business. Under $1,000, I'm interested. Until we get there, not a whole lot to talk about. But this company is phenomenal. But I got to get it for the right price. All right, that's going to be about it for this week. So big week next week on Jerome Powell. Again, we're going to most likely get a rate cut. What Jerome Powell has to say will probably dictate what the market does. Feels like we had a lot of pull forward this week based on the good inflation data, good earnings. So wouldn't surprise me either way if the market just blasts off next week or if we get some profit taking next week. The whole buy the rumor, sell the news. This week felt like buy the rumor of a rate cut. Once we get the rate cut, potentially could get a sell-off. But any sell-off that we get, as we've seen this year, let's pull up the SPY. Any sell-off that we get, it is instantly bought up, and we just shoot like a slingshot. It just pull back, shoot forward, pull back, shoot forward, and we just keep making higher highs, higher highs, higher highs. So things are looking good. That is all I got for you guys for this week. We'll have a nice video next week for you all. Have a great weekend. Peace out.